welcome back everyone to this episode of Galactic Reviews. This time we are reviewing the Netflix original Tick Tick Boom. It is a musical biopic. My mom corrected me earlier and said it was biopic. I have no idea which one it is, but I think biopic because biography picture. It is about Jonathan Larson, who is the writer and creator of one of the biggest Broadway shows and definitely most influential Broadway shows of modern Broadway, Rent. And it's just kind of his story of how he got there. So yeah, without getting too much into it, what did you guys think?
I really enjoyed this movie. I really enjoy Rent in the first place. So when I watched this movie, I was excited to learn more about his backstory and about him as a person. So in the music was just phenomenal. Then again, there's not much to be expected from that since he also did Rent. So, um, I was really, I really enjoyed it. Who they have for the actors, I thought they did well with that. It was just a really well made movie.
Unlike Zach, I have not seen Rent. That being said, I still found this at least somewhat enjoyable. I'll give it like maybe a 7, which is somewhat middle of the road for movies that are somewhat good. Didn't hate it, didn't like absolutely fall in love with it like Zach, and I'm pretty sure you would. Yeah, decent cast, decent score, kind of reflective of the times, especially with some of the camcorder shots that they had, some of the news cycling stuff that was going on at that point in time in 1990. Not really many complaints at all that I can think of. But yeah, no, the only reason why it's not high up on my list is because I know nothing about it and it seems very middle of the road. It's not like groundbreaking, but it's not bad. So
Fair enough.
Yeah, this movie itself was not groundbreaking. Rent very much was, at least for the theater world.
all right, and
Mhm.
Zach, what are you gonna rate it? I don't
Yeah,
think
I
you
know.
ever said anything.
I was about to say that. I was gonna give it like an 8, 8.5.
I give it a 9. I am decently biased. Rent is my all-time favorite musical.
I mean, to be honest, I figured you would be relatively biased because you are a theater geek. So
Yes, longtime theater nerd. Rent is my all-time favorite musical. It's to give you a little bit of background on it, it's just kind of life in New York during the AIDS pandemic. That's the very basic what it's about. And if you know Rent, you see a lot of what Rent was inspired by through Jonathan Larson's life because a
okay.
lot of the things that happen in the movie are very parallel to what happens in the musical with just friends getting AIDS or testing HIV positive.
Which I think one of the best parts was at the end of the movie when you have them saying, make the next one something you know. And you really do see that in Rent.
Yeah. The main character in Rent is a struggling artist. He's a cinematographer. He really wants to make it big filming. And
Mhm.
him and like two or three of his buddies live in this rundown apartment. And all of a sudden, their buddy who made it big and got out and married and has a successful like financial real estate life comes back in because he owns the building and is like, you owe me rent now. And they're like, we can't pay that. You said we didn't have to. And it's a whole like discovery from like different characters, finding out who they
Hmm.
are, trying to fulfill their life, stuff like that. It's very good. It's a rock musical, which really hadn't been done to that extent, and that kind of story hadn't really been ever told on Broadway. Most of the other shows were these big spectacles. Phantom of the Opera, you can argue, is also a rock musical, just different kind, I guess. But we have never, up until that point, really seen a gritty musical that talked about AIDS and sexuality and a whole bunch of other myriad of different issues, drug abuse. The others were just kind of like fantasies, to put it simply. So this musical is Rent was very influential to the Broadway scene when it came out. But this movie isn't about Rent. This movie is about Jonathan Larson. I think Andrew Garfield did a very good job with the role. I don't know much about Jonathan Larson other than what I've seen in the movie. I really just didn't know much about him,
Hmm.
but I think his singing was very good. The writing for the songs was very good. I don't know whether those songs were pulled from Tick Tick Boom, the musical, because I haven't actually listened to it. But overall, I just think the movie was very good and enjoyable as a movie musical. It didn't really disappoint in that aspect.
I will say, from what it seemed like on the end clips of the camcorder with the actual Jonathan Larson, it seemed like at least, if not all of them, were pulled from
Hmm.
some variation of that. It looked like they could have been, or at
Yeah,
least
adapted.
depicted as,
Yes.
yeah, like simply adapted from his life
Yeah.
and just doodles that he would have done,
Hmm.
that he seemed to do on a regular basis anyway.
Lin-Manuel Miranda directed this. This is also the man that wrote Moana and Encanto. I think he wrote that one. I haven't seen it yet. I'm not sure. The new Pixar movie. Do you know, Payson?
I don't believe that's Pixar, but I believe
It's
it's a
Disney.
Disney movie. I know it's Disney. I haven't seen that.
I haven't looked. It looks good. He did write the music of Encanto or Encanto. He did write the music for that. This dude just can movie after movie under his belt. He directed this one as well. I don't know what else he's directed, but he also wrote and starred in Hamilton and In the Heights, two other Tony Award-winning musicals. So this dude is just a genius of his time, honestly. He had a small cameo in the diner. The fun story of how Andrew Garfield got to play this role is that there apparently is a masseuse in LA that has like the hands of God because he works on all these A-list celebrities and they all go to him when they need him. And Lin-Manuel went to him and while he was under the elbow, he asked him, "Does Andrew Garfield sing?" And completely just lying, just BS, and it was like, "Yeah, Andrew Garfield sings." He did not sing. So Lin-Manuel Miranda contacted Andrew Garfield and he's like, "Hey, I want you to start my movie." And he was like, "Okay." Until they got him a vocal coach, and here we are now. So he hadn't had any other prior experience to like musicals before this, and knowing that, I think he did quite well.
I was about to, because I was gonna bring that up later. I didn't think that he had any experience because this was
Mm-mm.
the first time I've ever heard him
No,
do
there's
anything
that
like
song
this.
where in the Amazing Spider-Man 2 when Gwen dies. Don't you remember that? Just
This is the life of Boba Bobo. This is the life of Boba Bobo. This is the life of Boba Bobo. Bohemia. Bohemia. Boba Bobo.
Yeah. So
I think he did a really good job nonetheless.
yes, there was another scene in the diner song that they did that was very reminiscent of Someday in the Park with George, which is a Sondheim musical that he was kind of paying homage to. In that musical, in that number, there was so many Broadway stars.
Yeah.
That number was pandering to theater geeks. There was so many
I know.
ginormous stars.
Every time I saw one, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it.
And apparently, I looked this up during the panel where he was getting reviewed, where his stuff was getting reviewed by our writers. Those were all Broadway writers, esteemed Broadway writers, not just on Sondheim, even though Sondheim wasn't in the movie. If you didn't know, Sondheim just died like a couple weeks ago. So
So,
rest in peace.
so a couple weeks ago, did he die before this movie or after this movie came out?
I
Because
think he
this
died
movie
right
came
before the
out
movie.
a
I think he
month
died right
ago.
before the movie came out.
Okay.
what a weird stroke of bad luck.
Yeah, I mean that was not him in the movie. The
I mean,
person who was
yeah,
Stephen
but I
Hahn
mean,
in the
like,
movie was not him.
I
Yeah,
figured
well,
that
he would have
much,
been
but
pretty old.
yeah,
And they needed a depiction of the younger.
Younger, yeah.
even though he still
Oh
looked somewhat
no,
like an old guy.
no. The movie came out first.
The movie did.
It did,
So if anything, he got to see it possibly,
possibly,
which I mean, if anything, would be pretty cool.
because apparently he was very influential to
Exactly. That's what
Jonathan.
I said. That would be pretty cool to see that. I wonder if how they got all this information to write this biography. That's my biggest question.
I'm not quite sure.
If it was from other artists that had met him and talked with him about his life and everything, or
So apparently the musical Tick Tick Boom is
Mhm.
very similar. It tells the story of an aspiring composer named John who lives in New York City in 1990. John is worried he made the wrong career choice to be part of performing arts. So it might be I should probably go and watch a recording of the original. Maybe this is just a movie adaptation of that musical, which was a telling of his own story. But also, apparently, two people in that sat in the diner in like early in one of the earlier scenes of the movie, not the song,
Mhm.
were two people in Jonathan Larson's life. So like he had people to like pull from. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Yeah, because that was my next thing. I wanted to know how accurate was this movie in that aspect.
Yeah, I'm sadly not an expert, so I do not have answers on
Well,
that one.
no,
But
no,
that is a good point.
that's fine. That's fine. But other than that, to me, this movie was just really. Then again, I'm a really big sucker for musicals, to be perfectly honest. I've stopped watching musicals for a while, but then I went and watched Hamilton, and I got back into them. And so now I'm
Yeah,
spiraling out of control with musicals.
there you
Have
go.
been for a while. It was
Yeah,
really enjoyable to watch
yeah,
this. I really enjoyed it.
gotcha.
And with
Um,
that, we are now getting into spoiler territory.
I mean, yeah, I guess.
I mean,
I
there's
don't
not
know if
really
you
much to
consider
spoil, but
Yeah,
since
I
it's a
don't.
biography, I don't think you can really spoil much of anything.
Yeah,
you have been warned.
yeah,
Nonetheless.
yeah. If you
Nonetheless,
want to go into this movie blind, I mean, really, there's not much to spoil from this movie other than it's
it
this
probably helps that you
journey.
don't go in blind.
Now,
Yeah,
yeah. Now, Andrew, I did want to ask you, do they still have the original script of Superbia?
I don't know. One of the guys in the that I was talking about that knew him that was in the movie
Mm-hmm.
was one of the original members of the Superbia workshop. So I mean, there's a good chance. Yeah,
Yeah.
it just never got
Yeah.
produced.
From the description it was giving, it sounded pretty interesting and kind of accurate to how it is nowadays anyways.
Yeah, the weird it was weird. It was out
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
So it just wasn't Broadway material, and it was too fancy for off Broadway.
Wow,
Yeah.
he's the
Which
George
nowadays
Orwell of
it might.
plays.
There you go. It was very good. I just if you love musicals, definitely see it. If you can stomach musicals and like a good story, I'd see it. If you hate musicals, you don't watch this. You're just gonna hate on it. It was very good. It was very emotional. It got me choked up at one point. I think the directing was very good for musical because sometimes
Yes.
it's lacking in that respective for movie adaptations.
I think one of the best scenes was at the workshop when you finally get to hear that new song he wrote.
Hmm.
Just the directing for that one thing and the song itself, they did a phenomenal job on truly capturing that emotion that he put into that song.
Yes. And again, that just goes into Andrew Garfield's performance. He did very well being an emotional character.
I mean, he's had a lot of practice.
Yes. Yeah. He has had a lot of experience losing girlfriends.
Uncle
Um,
Ben, Captain Stacy, Gwen Stacy.
yeah, it was just a good movie. I don't really have much other to say than it would just be turned into me talking about Rent more.
Yeah,
So
because with biographies, there's not really much to talk about.
yeah, there's no
Um,
twists, there's no turns.
no, it's just
It's just good
watching
story.
him struggle until you get to see what he became in the end and how
Yeah.
he was able to write two masterpieces.
So go see it if you haven't already. It was very nice musical. It's about 2 hours. Good cast, really good cast, good music. It's catchy. It's gonna be in my head. It was in my head before I saw it because it blew up on TikTok. Just the bo 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 bo, just all in my head, bouncing around. The Kronk Award.
Can you give a Kronk Award to a biography?
Yeah, this one's tough because there's not a comedic relief character.
Exactly.
There was
I don't know
moments where Michael was funny, but then it got too deep into Michael's character for me to want to give him that award. I want to say, oh, Jerry, is that his name?
which one.
So the guy that ended up going into the hospital.
I was about to say that one that went into hospital.
The
Um,
only time we saw him, he was cracking jokes.
yeah, and you did get to see later on after he went into the hospital, they like, he can't do this to us because he's a real pain in the ass all the time. So I'm
Yeah.
like, yes, I can see giving it to him, but with a biography, I think it makes it a little bit more difficult.
Oh, Scott, the dude who walked in off
Oh,
the street into the party,
yeah, the
who just
one
had
that
no idea what was going on. He's just like, I like parties. They got cool drugs, and that was it. He was just there to have a good time.
I second
yes,
that.
no,
That's
yeah,
fine.
And then at the
yes.
very end, where he's watching Tick Tick Boom, he's like, "This is great."
Yeah, I should have remembered that because his first line just caught me off guard, and I'm like, okay,
So there you go. Scott gets the Kronk Award.
yes, 100%.
I will
Goodness
say
gracious.
the one thing I didn't like, I found it kind of weird for the girlfriend to not even show up at the playwright and then have the gall to give him a gift on his birthday for him to write another one.
I
I
mean,
think I found it more weird that she didn't show up
Yeah, well, I found it
or
weird that
didn't
she
go
didn't
and
show
sit
up.
down. No, no, not showing up at the workshop, that didn't bother me. It was more the fact she didn't show up to the next one at the very end of the movie.
yeah.
And well, or let me rephrase that, go sit down on the seat. She showed up, but
Hmm.
was in the background.
I mean, I
I
hope
don't
my
know.
exes are happy. I just don't necessarily want them to see me.
Oh, I thought they were still together. I didn't know they
No,
were.
no.
No.
Well, it was also the fact, I think it was more of a mutual thing between those two.
For his workshop, they had a very bad fight,
Yes.
and they hadn't made up yet, but they weren't broken up. And then after she gave him the gift, that goodbye, Jonathan, was like, "We're done. It's like, just our lives are not meant to be together," sort of thing.
So that could
That's
either be
right.
taken as a mutual respect of we need to leave each other alone, or I'm just gonna throw this in your face.
Yeah.
And
And
either way, it's
I think the reserved seat at like in his shows was less of I think she's coming and more of a I still love
Reminder,
her. I
maybe.
want her to be here, but she's probably not.
So
I mean, if that maybe that's how it actually played out, or maybe it was
yeah, if it
dramatized a little bit more, or maybe that's
yeah,
actually how it played out.
if that is how
I
it
would think it
actually
would be
went out,
dramatized, but
but
yeah,
I don't know.
I would have
I don't
thought they
know.
would have
We weren't there.
dramatized something to get it more Hollywood-esque and make more tension be there.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
would think that would have been the
Maybe.
thing.
I think
yeah.
one of my favorite interactions was actually between when you finally meet his parents.
That was fun.
Don't like the hair. He still looks like a weirdo.
I'm like, that is definitely how a father is when like he shows up. He's like, so are you being paid for this?
Are those seats for us? No, 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 no.
So
I enjoyed that brief interaction.
go see this movie if this interests you. I will say seeing Rent the musical or listening to it or just knowing a little bit more about it will probably make this movie more enjoy, or you'll get a little bit more out of this movie if you have knowledge of Rent, because there are like direct parallels between his life and what he created. Whose movie choice is it next?
I
It
think it's
is
Zach.
mine. My movie choice will be Spider-Man No Way Home. We'll see you next week for that review.
So yeah, we will see y'all then. Make sure to check all our stuff out on Spotify, Rumble, Apple Podcasts, YouTube.
YouTube.
Audea was the one I was
That
missing.
was
Check us out. Show it to your friends.
And you can now
Thank you.
also follow us on Twitter.
That's true.
we did just start
We
that.
are trying to expand our horizons, our
Mhm.
galactic horizons, and try to branch
Our
out on different
galactic
platforms.
empire.
Yes, our galactic reviewing empire for your pleasure.
Fantastic. All right. We will
You
see y'all
are
next
already
time.
annoyed with this.
No.
We'll see
We'll
you
catch
next
y'all
time
later.
on Galactic Reviews.